Here are the 5 most common contract negotiations and edit requests that I get and how I deal with them. If you're like me and you sell high-ish ticket B2B services, you probably deal with contracts. People think that actually talking to people on the phone and trying to convince them to buy something is the hard part about sales. But anyone who's sold a lot of B2B work knows that the real work starts once you've convinced them, because you have to get everything through contracts, procurement, and legal. This is because high-ish ticket B2B, or up to, let's say, low 6 figures, means that you're selling to companies that often have 2 specific teams that are going to make your life a living hell: legal and procurement. My mentor, Dan Martell, used to say that there's a department that exists inside businesses that it solely exists to waste your time, and that's procurement. What these 2 teams don't want you to know, though, is that they really don't have any power to kill a deal, unless you have something completely egregious in your contracts, which you shouldn't, and it should go without saying that you shouldn't, but don't have anything egregious in your contracts. And if you don't, then legal and procurement, they're a pain in the butt to deal with, but you can get things by them. As I've sold millions of dollars worth of B2B services over the years, I've come to realize that these 2 teams have certain things that they always try to negotiate within your contracts. Today, I'm going to tell you what they are, why they try to negotiate it, and then also how I get around them so that then maybe you can use these tactics as well. First off, what are the roles of legal and procurement? I've come to appreciate them because they're doing some good work out there, and they have a specific role to fill that's actually really good for the companies that they're representing. That said, they're trying to get the best deal and the best terms for them, and you're trying to get the best deal and the best terms for you, and those are often a little bit at odds, but if you work, you can usually get what you want, but also make it fair for everybody. Something I've learned about negotiation over the years is that they'll start trying to get the best terms for themselves. And if you start with trying to find a win-win for everybody, they're going to end up getting a better deal than you are. So unfortunately, what you have to do is you have to start off with the best terms for you. They'll start off with the best terms for them, and you'll work your way towards the middle. Of course, like the book says, never split the difference. There are a lot of ways to actually get things more in your favor, and I'm going to tell you some of those today. So legal and procurement both have important roles to play. Legal's job is to reduce risk for the company. This means that they'll do everything they can to reduce indemnification and what they can be held liable for, including where they can be sued. And we'll talk about that in a minute. Procurement's role is to get the company the best terms for the deal as they can. This means they primarily focus on payment terms and contract lengths. But their job is actually also to make sure that the job's done. They're also going to try to get shorter terms, so you have to come back to them again and again in order to keep getting projects put together. Even if it's going to be a monthly ongoing thing, they're still going to try to time bound it, so then you have to come back, new SOW, put things through negotiations again, all of that. So if procurement is involved in a deal, which you should know this ahead of time before even quoting anything, there's a couple of things that you should know. Number 1, the deal is going to take at least twice as long to get done. And number 2, you should increase your rates because they're not committing to as long, so you don't have that guaranteed revenue. And that guaranteed revenue really matters when it comes to enterprise value, ultimately, if you go to sell your company. But it's just going to be a lot more work for you and again and again. So raise your rates and then also offer them a discounted rate if they'll agree to a longer term contract. And a lot of companies, and this is not widely known, especially at the smaller agency B2B marketing space, a lot of companies, they are fiscally mandated. So they are required to take a deal that is better. So even if it's a little bit longer, say a 3-month deal, $2,000 a month, $6,000. If you propose them a 3-month deal paid up front for $5,750, they are required to take that deal. So you might make a little bit less, but you're also going to be able to front load that cash, which lets you then go market more and grow your business a lot faster. Ultimately, though, you need to know that procurement's job is to get the deal done, not to block it. They may play hardball with you over certain things like payment terms or jurisdiction, but ultimately, if you push back and you say no, and you're willing to walk away from the deal, wait a couple of days. What I found is it's about 2 business days on the nose where if you don't reply and backtrack and seem desperate for getting the deal done, they're going to come back to you and they're going to say, okay, fine, we can do what it is that you said. And you go, great, sounds good. Here's your updated contract. I've done this more times than I can even count, to be completely honest with you, and I always get my terms. So be willing to walk away from the deal. That said, here are the 5 most common contract negotiations and edit requests that I get and how I deal with them. Number 1 is jurisdiction. So what is jurisdiction? Jurisdiction basically means what laws govern the contract. So I have a Colorado LLC. So I put jurisdiction in Colorado because I am based here and they are the laws under which my company operates. It's common for legal teams to try to negotiate it back either to where they are based or where their business entity is based. So Delaware is a very common one. This is because if you got into a lawsuit, the law of the governing state is the one that you go off of, but also you have to be there. So both parties are required to show up to court if it goes that far. Well, if I'm in Colorado and it's under the state of Colorado's jurisdiction, the state of Colorado's court is in Denver. I live in Denver. It's going to be an easy 20-minute drive downtown for me. But if they're based in Florida, they're going to have to fly out here in order to be present. Because if you're not present, then almost always the suit is settled in the favor of the person who actually showed up. So jurisdiction jurisdiction does actually matter. I get asked for this one a lot. And basically what I tell them is if it's my contract, it's my jurisdiction. And then they'll come back, they'll ask about using their contract, which is point 2. So companies will ask us to use their contract instead of them using ours. And this is for a couple reasons. Number one, they don't want to pay their legal team to review someone else's contracts. That's literally costing them money to get the deal done. But number two, they've also created their contract to be in their favor, right? And it's already been reviewed. And so then they want to push that responsibility off onto you. So they like to push that off to you because they know it's in the contract. Just like I like to send them my contract because I know what's in it, right? And I want them to be the one to review it. I don't just tell them, no, I don't review other people's contracts. What I do is I give them an out. I very much believe in never telling people no, but giving them something that they can do and then let them decide if they want to do that or not. So in our case, I tell them, I'm happy to review your contract if one of two things is true. One, you're agreeing to an annual contract. So you're guaranteeing that you're going to work with us for the next 12 months. I'm not requiring payment up front, but they're signing a 12-month contract. And the second one is if the contract value is worth at least $25,000. That's not potential future whatever work, but actually the statement of work that's being sent for this contract totals out to at least $25,000. If neither of those is true, I'm not going to review their contract. Like I'm not going to review their contract for our minimum size engagement month to month that they're probably going to quit in 2 months. It's just not worth it to me to spend that time. So if they come back, they say, hey, is there wiggle room in this? I just tell them, unfortunately, there's not. This is where I'm willing to review your contract. So is there any wiggle room on your side as well? And then usually they'll say no. The next one is payment terms. People always try to negotiate these. It's procurement's job to get their company the best deal possible and the best payment terms possible, basically so that they can conserve cash, right? So usually what we have people come back with is that they say, hey, we only pay on net 60 or net 90 terms once the invoice is sent. And often they'll try to work in that you can only send the invoice after the work is done. So if you're signing a quarterly agreement and it's net 60, that's 5 months after you start work before you actually get paid. And usually companies will pay late. So really it's like net 75 or net 90. And so we're talking 5.5 to 6 months after work starts. And you just quite simply can't run a business off of that. It's actually amazing to me that giant companies try to do this to small companies like mine. And so I always push back hard on it. Quite simply, you should not agree to net 60 or net 90 terms ever. Even if you're sending the invoice right then and there as work starts, there's still egregious terms that just absolutely are not good for you. And they know it. They just try to get away with it because a lot of freelancers and a lot of small agencies will not push back because they're desperate to get the deal. So don't be desperate and push back on it. So how have I gotten around this? Quite simply, I've standardized our payment terms. If it's a month-to-month contract, we require payment up front. They have to have a payment method on file. First payment goes through and we can start, and then it's charged on a consistent basis. If they're willing to sign a quarterly agreement and pay up front, then we'll do net 14 terms. So 2 weeks, and we send the invoice when work starts. Same thing for an annual contract, but we'll do net 30 terms there. But we will only send the invoice when work actually starts. So if they're signing a 12-month contract and say it's $20,000 and they kick off on August 1st, I send the invoice on August 1st. So by having standardized terms like this, it's clear from the start. And if it's a complete non-starter for them or something they want to negotiate on, they can get that handled more up front. And then you just come back to them and say, these are the terms that we have, and we think that these are fair. And once again, if it's procurement coming back to you on that, their job is not to block the deal. Their job is to get the deal done, but also to get the best terms. So they're great negotiators. But if you just say, hey, these are what the terms are, and honestly, it's not negotiable, then they're going to end up agreeing to it. The fourth one is NDAs, or non-disclosure agreements. So an NDA, of course, is that you're not going to talk about the work that you've done together without their permission, and then they're also not going to talk about the work that you've done together without your permission. So there are a couple sneaky things that I've seen companies try to do with NDAs. One, which actually goes in tandem with the jurisdiction, is sometimes they'll say, we'll sign your contract and we'll sign your statement of work, but here's our NDA. And so what you have to look out for there is anything that contradicts the service agreement or contract of yours that they are signing. And the one that I've seen actually is jurisdiction. I say state of Colorado and they say state of Delaware in their NDA. And so if you sign that, then what happens basically is if a lawsuit happens, so they're going to go and argue that it's unclear which state and which jurisdiction the contract should actually be under. And they're probably going to be able to get into their own jurisdiction, which of course is beneficial to them. And then the second one that they'll sneak in sometimes is they're going to try to keep you from working with their competitors. They basically try to sneak a non-compete clause into a non-disclosure agreement, which is not where it should be. But if you sign it, you've signed it and you're up the creek. So I always negotiate that out. I say, sorry, we don't sign non-compete clauses. And they're like, well, what about competitors? You say, we do work with competitors. Like if Zillow came to us and they wanted to work with us, and then Realtor.com came to us and wanted to work with us, I'm not going to not work with Realtor.com because we're also working with Zillow. But I do tell them, I can guarantee you that we're not going to put the same team onto the project. When I worked for an SEO agency in the past, so our Seattle office, I remember worked with one company, and then our New York office, I believe I was a consultant on it, worked worked with a competitor of that client, but that consultant and I didn't talk shop, and we didn't talk about those clients with each other. We kept a hard firewall there. So that's an easy way to get around it. They just want to know that you're not going to take what you've learned from them and apply it to their competitor who you're also working with, and you're double dipping in the same pot. And the final one is guarantees that you can't control. Sometimes people are going to ask for a guarantee of results or something like that. But if you're only doing the strategy, producing content or something like that, you can't guarantee that they're going to get the results. Okay? So if they say they want to grow by 100,000 organic visits a month, and you produce the content that has that potential for that search volume, but you can't control what their competitor is doing. You're also not doing any technical SEO. You're not doing any link build. You're just producing content. Do not agree to a certain amount of traffic lift, because you just quite simply cannot control that. Well, say you agree to work 40 hours for someone in a month, but the amount of time that they use is determined by the amount of work that they give you. So you agree to work 40 hours a month, they pay you up front, but they also say that they get a refund for unused hours. So they're asking for a guarantee that you're going to work 40 hours, but they're not guaranteed that they're going to give you enough work for 40 hours. So there's a chance they might only give you 10. And so you're reserving 40 for them. You're not signing another client. You only work 10. And so you have to refund them the balance. Don't agree to that. Honestly, do not agree to that sort of contract. The best way to do this is to agree to certain outcomes. So we're going to produce this strategy. We're going to produce these 10 blog articles, whatever that is. So they can hold you accountable to producing all of that, but not to the result. And the work that you do is not dependent on them giving you assignments. So if you're signing on for 10 blog articles within 2 months, for example, you need to make sure before you even get started that they have 10 assignments ready to go for you, right? Never make your pay contingent on someone else doing their job, because there are a lot of people out there that just don't do a good job. Also, I highly recommend not selling hours. I highly recommend selling outcomes and selling the full project. You should never be penalized for doing great work faster. So those are the 5 things that I see companies often try to negotiate back in our contracts, and that's how I handle them. I'd love to hear what people try to negotiate back for you, how you handle it. And so share those in the comments, and I'll see you next time. John Doherty from EditorNinja. I'm out of here.